Good morning, everyone. Mr. Kennedy here. I'm going to record some of these videos to hopefully step you guys through how to use the piece of software that we learned about in your first lesson. Hopefully you were all able to have a look at the introduction page that I made for you on Canvas, where it talks about what Blender is used for, and watch some of these videos at the bottom which talked about why it's free, which was a bit of a history, and then how to look at Blender Guru's Beginner 1 tutorial. We're not going to necessarily follow those tutorials, although you could if you wanted to, as a bit of extension work or something else to do for the course. Make that donut. That would be a cool thing to do. But the focus of what I want to do for you today is basically I'm going to open up Blender and step you through what it looks like and the tools that we're going to use in the first few tutorials that you'll work through in this course. So hopefully you've all been able to install Blender on your computers or your laptops, and when you open it up it should look something like this. Mine may look a little bit different just as a result of my screen resolution, but yours should look somewhat similar. Even if you're on a Mac running it off a USB or whatever, it should come up like this. You can ignore this little thing and you just click off it and that goes away, and the sort of interface that you see is this. Now, Blender is a really complex software that has quite a lot of functionality in it, and we could ignore a lot of it for this stage. There's a lot of stuff on the screen here that's sort of confusing, and there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts that I'll be using, and if I use those I'll try and explain those to you. Blender really is built around using keyboard shortcuts, so hopefully that's something that we can get used to. To make life easier for you, I'm assuming majority of you are probably on laptops and you may or may not have an actual mouse that you're using. I would suggest that before we do anything here, if you come up to Edit and go to Preferences and then go to Input on the left hand side, what you should do is tick this box that says Emulate 3 mouse button. And what that's going to do is that's going to make it a lot easier for you guys to pivot around and move your 3D view. On a normal mouse like what I'm using, I can click the scroll wheel down, not scroll it up and down, but actually press the scroll wheel down, and that's what I can use to move around this 3D space. And if you turn on that Emulate 3 mouse button, I know on my Mac laptop, for example, if I press on the trackpad with 2 fingers, it allows me to do that. Or it might be, I think I might have to press Alt or Command or something like that. You guys will figure it out. That should help you. Scrolling up and down will zoom in and out, and left click and right click are used for accessing options and clicking and selecting certain parts of an object. So this user interface, what is this and what are we looking at? Well, there's some tools down the side here which are to do with selecting stuff. These are just 2 different methods of selecting. You can drag a box or click on something to select it, and this one here is a sort of a thing where you scribble over stuff and it will pick up what you're scribbling on. We've got a few tools here. This one is used to move an object along an axis. When you click on this, you get these 3 arrows. The blue one to move up and down, the red one to move along this axis, and the green one to move along this axis. And if you click on those arrows, it allows you to move an object along the axis of the arrow that you've selected. If you click within the circle there, it's just free move. You can do whatever you like, and that can be pretty confusing at times. The next one there is rotate. Now that one will let you similarly click on one of those 3 colors and spin the object along a certain axis. And it gives you a secondary line there on the circle that shows you where you're moving it from, and you could move it back to that if you wanted to. And the third one is scale, which will let you increase an object's size. Now that obviously only increases it along the axis that I'm selecting. If I wanted to increase or decrease the object's scale as a whole, you would have to click on the circle or in the circle, not select one of those 3 lines. So that's what those are for. The next thing that's important is if you all come back to this select tool, you get these things across the top. These are sorry, that's actually not what I was talking about. What we want to do now is we want to look at this object mode. We want to be able to change, there's 2 different modes or 2 different editing I'm going to stay with modes because that makes sense within the program. You can swap between object mode and edit mode, and when we go into edit mode, it means that I can edit this cube. I can change things about this cube. Whereas when I'm in object mode, all I can do is move the cube around and resize the cube. I can't, for example, change the shape or manipulate and morph the object as such. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change into edit mode, and you can see that it's all just gone orange. Now what that means is it's selected. To deselect it, you could double press A on your keyboard, and that will deselect everything. And then you could press A a single time to select all. That means select all, double press A, unselect all. Now when you're selecting stuff in edit mode, you've got three different options up here. We can select a vertex, which is what a corner is called. So any of these little black dots are referred to as a vertex. You could just left click with your mouse to choose one, and then you could choose move and move that vertex away to start changing the shape of my cube here. It's no longer a cube. Now I wouldn't have been able to do that in object mode. All I can do is move this object. I cannot change the object. To actually edit it, we have to go into edit mode. Now to choose more than one vertex, you could hold shift and select another one, or you could, for example, press C on the keyboard to bring up this selection circle, and then everything that I click and scribble over will get selected. Hit escape to get out of that circle select, and then I could start editing all of those vertices that I've just selected, like this. The next one here, I'm going to double press A to unselect everything. The next thing, if you have a look up here while we're in select mode, is edge select. Now edge select will actually let me select edges rather than vertices. I can select a line that connects from one vertex to another vertex, and I can move that entire line around. I could also scale it to lengthen that line or shrink that line. A to select all, double press A to deselect everything. The last one is face select, and I can use that to select a face and move the entire face around. Where now I'm rotating the face. So you can see how I started here as a cube. I'm going to go back out into object mode, out of edit mode, back into object mode, which by the way you can do by pressing tab on your keyboard. We'll just immediately swap from edit mode to object mode in a pretty fast way. So here I am in object mode looking at what used to be a cube, and I was able to use the move tool, the rotate tool, and the scale tool, while in edit mode using vertex select, edge select, and face select in order to manipulate this cube to turn it into whatever you want to call that object. Okay, so now I want to actually kick you off into your first little tutorial and tell you the first task that you're going to work on. Some of you I know have a double lesson coming up, or this task might take you a number of single lessons as required. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to can this and I'm going to make a new document. I'll go File, New, General. Don't want to save that one. So here's a new one. I've got another blank cube in another blank canvas. This, by the way, is a camera, and we'll learn about that later when we start doing some animations. You could click on that to select it, hit X, and X will bring up this little delete box, and you can choose delete and it will go away. And this one here is a light. That's a sunlight, and we'll learn about that later. You could click on that, hit X, and select delete to get rid of it. Okay, so here's your cube. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the tools that I just showed you and another function called extrude, and we're actually going to turn this cube into the first letter of your first name, and then we're going to add a few more cubes and change those and manipulate those to write a name or a nickname or something. Whoops. Okay, so what I can actually do here is, by the way, if I hold whatever you're doing to rotate the screen around, if you hold shift and do that same thing, it will let you pan or move this around. So if I wanted that over here, I could do that. And that's sort of where I want it to sit for this tutorial. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, I'm going to kick into edit mode. Why is that not working? I've not got an object selected. Okay, click into edit mode. I'm going to unselect all. I'm going to make sure that I'm in face select mode, and I'm going to choose a face by just selecting that surface. Now, I'm going to teach you a new tool here. If we use the move function, and I move this up, and now I wanted to, for example, take this face and move it out, all I can do is move this whole face. I can't just grab the top half of this and move it. So if I undo back here, just by using Control Z like in any other program, or Command Z on a Mac, this is where I started. Now if I select this face, and instead of using the move tool and dragging this blue arrow, I'm going to extrude this. There's a button over here that says extrude, or you could just press E on your keyboard, E for extrude, and then just drag your mouse. There's no clicking needed there, just E and then drag. And you can move this thing up, and then click to accept where you've extruded or to apply that. Now what I can do is select this other face, and if I move it out, you see what happens. It moves this face, but this line is still connected from that vertex to that vertex, so it gets moved. The alternative is I can hit E again to extrude that, and it will slide out to the side here. Now I've got, this little 3 thing. Now the first letter of my first name is E, so I'm going to continue doing this to make the letter E. I'm going to pivot down here, select this face, and I'm going to extrude it down a number of times. This is the face that I could use to pull out for the center of the E. This is the face that's going to be the gap between the middle one and the lower one. And this is the face that I'm going to extrude out to be the bottom of the E. I'm just going to move that one out a bit more. Select this one, extrude. I'm not using the move arrow here. I'm using E to extrude. Slide that out. Select this bottom one, and I'm going to move it out to be roughly the same as the top one there. Okay, and there's my E. Now if I hit Tab to get out of object mode, what I can do now is click up here on Add, Mesh, Cube, and it gives me a new cube. It puts it in the same location where that cursor was originally that we could drag around with this. So if I was to move that over here and then add a new cube, it puts it wherever that is. I probably should have done that first, but that's okay. So here's the cube that I've just inserted. I'm just going to move it along that red line so that it sits sort of somewhat next to that. Now, the second letter of my first name is V. Now that's a bit tricky because we've got to deal with some angles here. So if I select this cube and I knock into edit mode, I now need to change this cube so that it looks like a V. Well, I've got a number of options here. I could rotate the entire cube to start, so I could just hit A to select all, and then rotate this cube around, double press to unselect, and now just start moving this. Now the problem here is because I rotated this, if I'm using my move tool, this actually just lets me still move directly up and down. It doesn't let me move along that axis. See that? So you'd have to move down and then across. And you'll have to just figure that out. Whatever works. Now, because I need this to start going up, I need a face that's sort of similar here. So what I could actually do now is rotate this face around and then move it into a place that I'm happy with it. Select all, move that, whatever. I'm just sort of doing this of my own will. Your first name is going to be different, so you're going to do a different thing here. Choose this face now. If I start just moving this one again to have the right hand side of my V coming up, it won't work. It's going to stuff up my V. If you hit E to extrude, move this along to create yourself a new face, and then start editing that one, it will work. Rotate it around like the original one. Something like that. Now that's pretty dodgy. You guys could spend a bit more time and get this a bit more accurate if you wanted to. And that's all I'm going to do for my whole name. I'll stop talking for a second and I'm going to do the next letter, which is A. Okay, now this is somewhat dodgy, and I haven't actually welded those faces together there. I haven't joined those vertexes on. I was just leaving that pretty quick and nasty for now, and we'll learn that another time. Anyway, I hope you guys get the idea. What I would like you to do now is to jump into Blender and attempt to do this for your first name, or if your first name has 37 characters in it, you might just want to choose a nickname or write a word or whatever. Just do your initials or the first, whatever, doesn't matter. Pick a name and do it. And once you've done that, I'd like you on Canvas to navigate. If I just jump into student view so you guys see what you guys see. What you'll see in a minute is you'll see another thing here that says online tasks, and there'll be one that says Blocky name, and I'd like you to upload a screenshot of your Blocky name to that for me. And that should give you something to do for at least the first probably 2 lessons. There's one of the classes has a double lesson, and that should sort you out for that. And if you finish in time and you want more to do, then you might want to come back to the introduction page and actually go and start doing Blender Guru's donut tutorials as well to give you some extra information. Thanks guys, and tune back in for another video after you've completed your Blocky name. Bye.